I'm joining you tonight from Wurundjeri country. So if you'd like, feel free to share the name of the lands you're joining from in the chat. Yarra City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. And we also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to the life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations, past, present, and future. Tonight, we're here to talk about solar on apartments and to answer your questions. Before we dive in, I'll just go over a quick bit of housekeeping. Tonight's session is being recorded, so your microphone and video are turned off. And we're here to answer your questions tonight, so please don't be shy and ask away. We'll have a brief introduction from each of the panelists, and then it's over to you for questions. And we also gave people the opportunity to email questions through beforehand. So thanks to those who've submitted your questions beforehand. We'll ask our panelists your questions tonight as well. Post your questions in the Q&A at any time, and we'll read them out for the panelists to discuss and answer. We'll also use the chat to share links to further information. So to get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're doing at Yarra Council. Through our climate emergency plan, we've committed to supporting the community to create a city powered by 100% renewable energy by 2030. And we're also aiming to double the rooftop solar in Yarra. And in the city of Yarra, 87.5% of dwellings are medium to high density. So we know that unlocking solar for apartments is a huge part of what we need to do to reach these ambitious targets. In October last year, we held a Solar for Apartments information session, and there were a lot of great questions asked and answered on the night, but we had so many questions we couldn't get through them all. We ended up asking the speakers to answer those questions in writing after that event and sending the answers to the participants. But we know there are still a lot of questions out there, so we decided to hold a Q&A session as part of Sustainable House Day to give you a chance to really focus on getting the information that's important to you. So I'd just like to mention a couple of resources. The Yarra Energy Foundation has recently released a guide to solar for apartments, which has step-by-step guidance on working with your owner's corporation, selecting a solar system and a supplier, available rebates, and more. And at Yarra Council, we've also just developed new guides to improving sustainability in apartments. The Unlocking Sustainable Strata guides and the Guide to Electrifying Your Apartment Building or Townhouse contain practical advice to help you and your owner's corporation improve sustainability, install solar, and go all electric to create a building that can be powered completely by renewable energy. We developed these guides in partnership with Marybeck City Council and the environmentally sustainable design experts at HIP v Hype Sustainability. And inside, you'll find tailored advice for high-rise, medium-rise, low-rise apartment buildings and townhouses. And you can find all of these guides, including YEF's Guide to Solar for Apartments, at yarracity.vic.gov.au/solarapartments. You can also watch the recording of the Solar for Apartments information session we held late last year on that site. And you can also find out more by joining our Unlocking Sustainable Strata event next Tuesday. On our Solar for Apartments webpage, you'll also find a link to register for this event if you're interested. We'll also share these links to these resources and the events by email at the end of this session. So we've got a great panel tonight to share practical tips, advice, and inspiration. Here to answer your questions, we have Will Anstey, Business Development Consultant at Illume Energy, Murray Griffin, a resident of a Richmond apartment building that has installed solar and received Solar Victoria rebates, PK, resident of a Fitzroy apartment building who has extensive experience working with owners corporations, and Nathan Hage, resident of a Sydney apartment building that has installed solar with Illume's solar sharing technology, as well as other sustainability measures. So with that, I'll introduce our panelists. Will is joining us from Illume Energy. Illume is the founder and producer of the SolShare, the world's only hardware that connects multiple apartments to a shared rooftop solar system. Established here in Melbourne in 2015, Illume Energy strived to democratize solar and make it accessible to all, especially those residing in apartments. And the SolShare unlocks this ability. Will is part of the commercial team at Illume and is based in Richmond within the city of Yarra. Will works with local councils, environmentally sustainable design consultants, developers, and social housing providers to educate and provide guidance on the types of buildings that are suitable for SolShare. This includes new and existing builds, office blocks, combined residential and commercial, and also some townhouses. Will, could you give us a brief overview of Illume Energy's SolShare technology and how it can connect multiple apartments to one shared solar system?
Absolutely, Mel. Thank you for the kind introduction. So as Mel mentioned, I'm from Illume Energy. So we're a Melbourne-based company, and we manufacture the SolShare. So at heart, we are a technology company, and we are the only providers of that. Basically, the ability to share a single rooftop system between multiple tenants in an apartment that includes both grid-metered apartments and embedded networks. So it means that, you know, as an individual, you only basically receive your solar when you need it, but it ensures you have an equitable access as well. So I guess it's really important when it comes to those shared assets, and there's a lot of economies of scale when it comes to that. That's us in summary. I guess I'll pass back to Mel.
Thanks very much, Will, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'll introduce all of our panelists and then we'll go into Q&A. So now I'd like to introduce Murray Griffin. Murray recently joined with his neighbors to install solar on his apartment building in Richmond. Eligible owners were able to access the Solar Victoria solar rebate. You'll hear about Murray's solar story tonight, but you can also see it on the local solar stories page of our Take Climate Action website. And I'll put the link in the chat because it's a bit long. Murray, could you briefly share a bit about your experience working with your apartment building to go solar? Sorry, Murray, you're just on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. So we live in an 18-unit apartment block in Richmond, and we opted for a opt-in bulk buy of individually owned units. We ended up with 10 people opting in, and 8 of those are owner-occupied. 2 of them are land, they have tenanted properties. They're 2 kilowatt systems, and which is fine actually for, they're not big apartments, generally 1 or 2 people living in them. And most people were eligible for the Solar Homes grant as part of that process.
Thanks, Murray, and thanks for joining us tonight. And now I'll introduce PK. PK is a consultant and active member of the Yarra community. He has spent considerable time serving on owners corporation committees with a focus on developing sustainable and energy efficient communities. In Victoria, the initiatives that PK has led have been recognized through winning the Strata Community Association Victoria's Strata Community Environmental and Engagement Award for Excellence. He is also a contributor to the Unlocking Sustainable Strata Guide, developed in partnership by Yarra Council, Marybeck Council, and Hip v Hype Sustainability. PK, your building in Fitzroy has taken a very proactive approach to becoming more sustainable. Can you tell us a little bit about the sustainability subcommittee that you're on and how it has helped?
Thank you, Mel. In my building, we've formed the sustainability subcommittee really with the goal of saving our owners money by reducing our building's running costs. And now, whilst there are many facets to sustainability, our committee's current focus has been on energy. Firstly, the reduction of energy usage in our building. Secondly, producing our own renewable energy via rooftop solar. And thirdly, planning for electric vehicles in the building. When our subcommittee started planning for rooftop solar, we began with reviewing the energy inefficiencies within our building that existed to ensure that the future power being generated by solar is supporting efficient common infrastructure, which I'm keen to talk a little bit more about finding those inefficiencies during our Q&A.
Great, thanks PK. I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that. And if you've got any questions about that for PK, please pop them into the Q&A. And now I'd like to introduce Nathan Hage. Nathan is an apartment owner and committee member of a 4-story apartment building in Sydney. He has worked with his apartment building to install a large solar system, which is shared among the residents using SoulShare technology. And this is just the latest in a 5-year journey for Nathan's apartment to improve sustainability and energy efficiency and install EV charging. Nathan, can you share a bit about getting solar on your apartment and the sustainability measures your building has installed?
Yeah, thank you, Mel. Much like Pika, I think the first goal was efficiency and effectiveness in what we've got. And then we went through a process of going through a series of obvious steps for those: lighting, sensors, et cetera, and variable speed drives on pumps, all the usual sorts of things. Then we had a graduated process. We got 2 phases of solar installed for the common areas in the building. And then from that, we had a third party which provided a business case for that, and then we did a post-implementation review. The point of that was just to get the confidence of the owners' corporation that spending a relatively small amount of money actually made sense, and it stacked up. So then from there, there was a couple of years hiatus that we shan't talk about, and then we had a joint process where we had a solution for electric vehicle charging in the car park. So essentially, the quick version is we've got 30 spaces and 10 chargers. So every space has got access to 2 chargers, and that's a pay-as-you-go system. Then at the same general meeting, I presented the solution for which is actually Illume. So sharing for the solar for the apartments. So the first 2 solar systems were 25 kilowatts in total, and then the third system for the apartments was 75 kilowatts. So what that meant was it was really, Illume was just having laboured over how we could achieve the electrification of the building and using all this glorious roof space that was underutilised or not utilised at all. Then along came Illume, which was a really simple solution. Will might not agree that it's very simple, but the outcome is very simple for a really complicated problem in apartments.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nathan. And thanks for joining us tonight. So please start adding your questions. I see we've already got some coming through, but please keep adding your questions and we'll ask them to our panelists as we go along. And I'll just start with, there's a couple of clarification questions that have come through during your introduction. So I'll just start there. Murray, look, there's a question for you from David. Is that a separate 2 kilowatt installation for each of the 10 apartments?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And how do you find, I'll just follow that up with, how do you find do you find that covers a lot of your usage?
It does. I wish I could say how much our bills have gone down. It's a bit hard because we've swapped plans and so on. But everybody has reported, well, as far as I'm aware of, everybody has reported a significant drop in their power bills. I think one of the things with a project like this is that you do create a bit of a coalition of the willing. So, we can then move on to the next step of installing a battery or whatever to get further gains on those, to further cut those electricity bills.
And is that what your building has been discussing as the next step, possible next
step?
Well,
I think I can tell you that I know that there are people interested in doing that. We haven't actually taken that step, but I'm pretty confident that people will be keen to do it. I think one of the other things, of course, there's disadvantages to the way we did it, but there's also some advantages, I guess. And one of the things, we had, for the people who didn't participate, I think this first step has given them the confidence to realise that when others take action, it won't affect or disrupt, their life in a way. So I think it'll smooth the way a bit for those next steps.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's also a clarification question for you, Nathan. David asks, I wonder how many electric vehicle connections, I think you did mention that, and after he's asked the question, but maybe you could refresh our memory, how many electric vehicle connections you have made and how you have gone about it.
We've got, there's 10 chargers that we've got installed, but we've future-proofed it. It's a flat cable solution. And so what that means, well, essentially what that means is that we can install as many chargers as we like. So we can have, you never would, you could have multiple per space if you wanted to. Obviously you're not going to, but certainly the system is designed to be future-proof so that you can have one charger per space.
Fantastic. That's really exciting. I have a question that I would like, we do have other questions here, but I'm going to jump in because I'd like to ask the whole panel, what do you think are the key ingredients for an apartment building to successfully install solar? And what advice would you give those working with their owners corporations on how they can set themselves up for solar success? Who would like to jump in first?
I'll go. So the key ingredient for me was understanding that everyone's got different motivators. So for some people, it's going to be purely environmental. For some people, it's going to be financial, whether that's positive or negative. And some people just don't want to spend, the money that's in the Capital Works Fund or raise the funds, or they just don't want to grasp the concept of this shared living environment that we're in. So and I think as long as we understood those, and I could actually pre-prepare and answer all of those questions as well. And I think, and also together with that, it was important for our building to have a third party. So it wasn't just your particular committee or one particular person that was a champion or an advocate, or it's someone's pet project. It was, yes, you've got someone enthusiastic, but also then you've got a proven third party. And this happened to be through the City of Sydney Council. This recommendation came through where they built a business case, and we built the confidence in there.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Nathan. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
Yeah, go.
Thank you. Look, I've learned so much on this journey, and I know that it takes at least one person on the committee to champion and keep the momentum going in the project. Most often, initiatives like this or ideas like this die because of apathy rather than opposition. So be prepared to put in the work and keep the momentum going over an extended and unpredictable time horizon. Now, some of you joining this Zoom tonight might have 10 lots in your building. Some of you may have a few hundred. So affecting positive change in your community is going to be different for each of you, but the principles and strategies can be applied over strata schemes, big and small. For me, once you've determined that rooftop solar is going to be technically possible for your building, from my experience, people often underestimate the importance or work that goes into obtaining a special resolution from the Owners Corporation. Without a special resolution, nothing happens. Now, as solar panel installation on a common rooftop is considered a significant alteration to common property, a special resolution in Victoria needs to be supported by at least 50% of owners in favour and no more than 25% voting against it to achieve an interim resolution. So that's got to be done via a ballot that's open for a maximum of 14 days. So it's quite a tight time frame. So in the lead up to opening that ballot, which effectively gives you permission to put the solar on the rooftop, you may wish to consider a few ideas that I've found to be effective from my experience to increase the likelihood your ballot is successful. And some of the ideas that I've found to work are creating a building WhatsApp group or Facebook group to build and foster community and ensure the benefits of the sustainability project are communicated and promoted. You could develop a short YouTube video of yourself providing an overview of the projects and benefits which is sent out to all owners. Remembering that your ownership base may be overseas as well, it may be interstate. Not all owners are people that live next door to you. In that video, we found it to be effective to also invite owners along to an information session. And at that information session, we anticipated the questions owners may ask, such as how will the project be funded? Will these works impact the warranty of the roof? How to ensure that the penetrations don't cause issues for the roof? And you could also consider inviting your solar contractor along to that information session too. And that info session could be done before the special resolution is formally open. And you're very unlikely to get all of the owners along to an information session. So using a combination of the video and really adopting some marketing 101 to give your ballot every chance of success. I certainly would never rely on our Owners Corporation manager to develop a letter that accompanies a ballot, or it will, like all Owners Corp communications, it will be boring and it won't excite owners. So be factually accurate, act in good faith, but also ensure that you communicate the benefits as well, and make the most convincing case possible by putting a lot of thought into the wording of the ballot. And as it's been previously mentioned, don't assume that your owners base are going to be eco-conscious. A lot of people, particularly at a stage now that we're in a cost of living crisis, people are very price sensitive. So your communications could also include referencing to saving owners money, reducing electricity usage, and reducing the building's running costs. So you are in a way achieving sustainability by stealth, in a way. One other point I'll make is that if your Owners Corporation management company doesn't do digital voting, request that they consider adopting this, as it can increase the number of owners that participate in the ballot. So in closing, you are in fact running a campaign to get the idea or the project across the line to a group of owners.
Thanks, PK. Some really useful insights in there. Will, did you have anything else that you would like to add to the question of what advice you'd have for people to set themselves up for success?
Yeah, definitely, Mel. I think the biggest thing, and a lot of our team, as a Loom, we work with a lot of solar installers and we educate them around, what SolShare does and how that they are there to sell that to the customer. The biggest thing that we find is education, like across everyone involved, is so important. Now, when it does come to OCs, this can be very difficult because, an OC can range from, 2 tenancies to hundreds, and even there's probably thousands in some. But on a case-to-case basis, there's usually 10 to 50 is pretty average. So that's a lot of people that you have to educate, and for them to go on their own journey and resolve, if it's shared solar, for example, or EVs, what does that mean to them? And, what's the impact to them? How does it influence them? Whether it's in an impact basis or a financial basis, or a, potential savings basis. At the end of the day, there is time involved in that. And I guess the OC and the committee itself really has a role to play in that priority. And I know a lot of the people that we've been involved with, I know we've been involved with David and obviously Nathan as well. In these situations, those people play a massive role in education and advocating. And I think it's not something that should go unnoticed as well, because it does play a really big role, I guess, on the, path to electrification and net zero. And at the end of the day, they're basically a teacher for everyone. And I think it's really timely, you know, with all of the Unlocking Sustainable Strata collateral that's coming out. I mean, I find that really, really simple to understand and look at and identify, you know, what that means to different people. And I think the other key thing is, you know, we've got people, you know, from like diverse backgrounds, diverse, you know, languages, understandings of solar and all different environmental aspects. So it's really important that it's tailored to meet every person's needs, and that it is very difficult. But as PK mentioned, you know, we do need to hit 50% consensus with you know, as long as 25 don't object, then, you know, there is that aspect that it is promising it can be done. And it's just really important that people take action. And I guess what I've seen over the last 12 months is there's been a lot more will to take action, not just talk about it. Yeah, so that's me in summary. Hopefully that's helped a little, Mel.
Thanks, Will. That's great. And yeah, I can see a lot of common themes coming out of that discussion. Education is important, community, and making sure that everyone's diverse needs are taken into consideration. So that was really useful, I think. All right, the next question we have is an anonymous question. I live in a smallish, around 30 units apartment complex in Carlton North. The units are in 4 buildings, so we have 4 large flat roofs that could be used for solar. Whenever I've asked our strata committee about installing solar on our very flat, fairly new roofs, the committee manager tells me there's no point. We can't install enough solar panels to provide for everyone's power. Would this be accurate? Would we maybe only be able to use solar for hot water? Or should we realistically be able to have enough solar panels for all units to generate their electricity? We probably don't know, without being there, we probably don't know enough to directly answer the question, but Will, you might be able to give some insight into kind of in a general sense, a building can, how much solar could be installed on a building.
Yeah, definitely, Mel. Thank you. I think the biggest thing is, I guess, having an impartial party, and Nathan mentioned having that third party that is impartial, that is quite important on a consultancy level. You know, a lot of the customers we work with, I mean, although we're sort of disconnected from it, we are still involved to a degree. And we do recommend, if that's a key priority, that you do get in touch with, you know, well-educated consultants that are across all the technologies. And you know, a lot of the people on the panel can recommend people that can do that. At the end of the day, it really depends on, definitely your roof space, the amount of tenants. A lot of the time, if it's even on the SolShare side of things, to speak from an Illume perspective, the amount of roof space you require is actually surprising how little you do need. Because with what we do, everyone shares that same space, so you get a lot of efficiencies there. But at the same time, it is recommended that even if you're not on the committee, you know, go and do your own research if you really are passionate about it. You know, you do have the ability to influence and make change. And whether you're not on the committee at the moment, you know, you may be able to get on the committee for the next financial year, or, you know, when that does renew. So kind of all the knowledge and research that you're gaining looking into something is really important. But if you've had pushback from your OC, you know, definitely ask why. You know, is there someone that's told you that's not okay, you know, that can't be done if it's shared solar for apartments, for example? And if not, even get a second opinion. You know, there's nothing, you know, people always say, if you get one quote, get another, just for a comparison. It can be really important because you never know how that person has been educated as well. So it is important to get that. That's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Will. PK or anyone else, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I'd certainly recommend, where possible, get on the committee. That's an important part of it. If there's no room on the committee in the current financial year, ask the committee to establish a sustainability subcommittee, which you could be part of. You won't necessarily have voting power, but you could be undertaking research and presenting it back to the voting committee to enact some of the changes. In relation to the building in Carlton, I think any roof space is an opportunity to make a difference in renewable energy production. Now, the person that said it's not possible might be considering that there's too many units to do a sole share split possibly. But one option is that the owners corporation use the roof space to run common power as well, which would make a difference to running all of the different systems in the building, lighting, HVAC systems, all the things that you're paying as a lot owner or a tenant, which go to running the common elements of the building.
Thanks, PK. Nathan, did you have something you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think so. And I certainly concur with that. And I think it's actually surprisingly easy for the right people just to pull the facts and pull the data and actually present a case, and just to say, how is the building behaving? What's the consumption overall? What's the split between the units and the building? And then what's the capacity, the modeling for the capacity of the solar generation? It's fairly straightforward for those that know what they're doing. It's not expensive either. You can do it for a relatively small amount, and it slays a lot of dragons when it comes to these conversations. I've got, if it's of use, I've just got some quick overall numbers for the solar generation for the first 204 days of sole share for this building. And the interesting thing is, so generated 62,000 kilowatt hours, and the building's demand as a total was 56,000 kilowatt hours. So now we haven't got batteries yet, but what that does mean is, from what was actually consumed from a solar point of view, which is 22,000, we're actually battery ready. So it means that we've got enough power to effectively, we never will, but we can effectively just draw zero from the grid. Obviously, there's going to be a few days cloudy here and there, whatever. But overall, the numbers are staggering, and that's just to say the whole of the building can be supplied from solar on the roof, which is really, really pleasing, and it has pushed a lot more envelopes than perhaps I expected to, in terms of the amount that was generated. But the whole point of what I've been trying to do here with the support of the rest of the committee was aim high. So we've done that, and that's great. And I think then the beauty, and this isn't an Ellume advertorial, but the real beauty of it is that it's equitable. So how we split the allocation, or how we presented the opportunity at our special meeting, was that we would allocate the solar in line with the units of entitlement. So how the levies are calculated is how we'd allocate the solar. And that's also how we allocated the cost, the share of the cost of the installation as well. So then that sort of got rid of a lot of emotion out of the equation as well.
That's fantastic, Nathan. It's really good to hear how you've allocated the solar and how you've allocated the cost, and to make it really equitable, and really exciting to hear those numbers. Can you remind us how many units are in your building so that we can get a sense of the
sure.
scale?
So there's 45 units, 22 one bedroom, 22 two bedroom, and then 1 3 bedroom. So that's, and then for example, I'm in a 2 bedroom, so on average I get sort of 7.5, 8 kilowatt hours a day. Surprisingly enough, I'm pretty frugal, so I don't use anywhere near that. And even when there's a battery sharing solution which we'll work on, there's going to be plenty left over. But philosophically, for me, it's the right thing to do. So 45 units, and then there's certainly sufficient solar. With batteries will cater for all of the apartment needs, and then on top of that we've got a separate 25 kilowatts which will take care of the building's relatively limited needs, but it also will cater for as our gas water system comes to end of life, which it is doing. We're going to replace that with an electric system, so that'll cater for that, and then probably have a separate battery system to go with it.
Fantastic. And is it every apartment in your building that's participating in the soul share?
They are. So that was Plan A, and it was this was unanimously approved at a special meeting, which was remarkable. might be remiss of me, but I did schedule the meeting for 5 o'clock on Melbourne Cup Day, thinking that there might not be too many people that turn up, but there was actually there was a record number of people. But it was positive. There was lots of good questions, and again, as I spoke earlier on, there's different people have different motivators, but it was unanimously approved.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear, and great to have that kind of interest even on Melbourne Cup Day.
Absolutely, even in New South Wales.
Yeah, fantastic. We have a question from Heather. What are the considerations? Essentially, what's different when it comes to larger apartment buildings compared with smaller ones? Who would like to tackle this one?
I mean, I'm happy to give it a go. Look, roof space is going to be one element. If you are a 12-story building in Collingwood, you're going to have, potentially more limited roof space. High rise is going to, from a technical point of view, you've got the cable runs where the cables have got to run from the roof down to, the power plant or sort of the junction. They're probably the main considerations, and obviously just the number of lots that there are. Is it going to be feasible when you have 200 lots to split the power using a sort of a sole share or a loom methodology, or do we just power common power? So I guess there's the questions of what suitability is there for the committee and for the building.
Great, thanks, PK. Excuse me. Will, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, definitely. And I think just to kind of echo PK, it's really dependent on your property type. At the end of the day, it's one of those things though, when a key thing to note is when you look at allocations, a lot of what we do, I mean, a lot of our projects go as little as even 0.8 kilowatts per tenancy. But in general, it's around that 1 to 2.5 kilowatts per tenancy. The key thing to note with solar, because you have your demand for energy, the lower you actually have as an allocation, so the closer you get to 1, for example, the proportion that you actually are going to self-consume will be a lot higher. Because if you go from 1 to 1.5, the benefit will increase, but it'll be a bigger increase than from when you go from 1.5 to 2. Because keeping in mind that because feed-in tariffs are fairly small, and they are continually going down, your kind of self-consumption percentage is a good requirement, because if you're offsetting your consumption from the grid, which, in Victoria, it's around 23 cents on average, up to 26 cents, depending on where you are, and it's predicted to go to around 30 cents July 1, according to all the current news in the last week. And from that, if you're, adding solar unnecessarily, with, a larger system, a lot of that energy ends up being fed back to the grid. Now, at the moment, you may get 5 or 6 cents, but that is the idea of that may reduce. So that's where, if you do have batteries, that's a really good way of doing it. Now, it just depends whether batteries are an option or not. And that's a key kind of thing to consider. I mean, you can do shared batteries with what we do. But I guess to come back to that, it's, finding out, is your asset type, suitable for, if it's sole share, if you guys have if it's a big building, you have a lot of shared, I guess, amenities. You might have shared hot water, shared EV chargers, lifts and all of that. The priority might just be to do a common system, for example, just for your common area, because everyone benefits from that as well. So at the end of the day, it's really finding a few recommendations or, consultancy advice to actually find out from a professional party what is the best bet. And, a lot of the time, even for us, people, work with consultants and then cross-reference with us, because at the end of the day, it's, finding the right consultants is a key thing. And at the end of the day, it's finding what works for you. and who you trust, and building those relationships is really, really important. Not to kind of discredit it, but trust is a big thing, even in this industry as well.
Great. Thanks, Will.
Can I just add one thing there as well? One of the things that I've noticed since, so we started this sustainability and renewable energy journey in 2017. So a lot of the base case or business cases that we had at the time for solar talked about payback. So I'd encourage people to think a little bit differently about that now, because it's return on investment is the better measure. And also, when people talk about payback, it's how long will it take to pay for itself? Whereas return on investment, obviously, is really what it is. It's an investment, and what returns are you actually going to get? And I think going back a number of years now, the ROI was about 14% on this the first system that we had put in place. And the reason that's important, because then you can change the language and you can ask, you put it to the meeting that what is an average return on your superannuation, and typically it's a lot less than 14%. So it becomes a really compelling argument that way. And it's got more and more compelling as obviously energy prices have gone north, as they have done over the last number of years.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Nathan, and a really great piece of advice. Excuse me. The next question is an anonymous question, and I'm going to kind of combine two questions here. So is there anywhere a question and answer document that can be distributed to owners to arouse interest and tackle the obvious concerns? And this person says, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. And I'll just follow that on with just a bit of a broader question of where did you turn to for help or inspiration or to learn more during the process? Or where would you suggest people go for more support? So if there's anyone who'd like to address either specifically, is there a question and answer document that you could point someone to, or any other type of support or resources you'd direct them to?
I would suggest go to your friendly local council. They've got some fabulous resources, as we put at the top of the meeting. And I know there's a lot happening here, and I think most councils are being really proactive. And there's a lot of really good materials. And I've looked at some of the stuff that Yarra City did, and I think that's fantastic as well. And you're right, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Most of the hard learning has been done. So to do it now, it's the answers are there. So, and most councils will have I think the phrase that Maury said was a coalition of the willing. So there's a lot of case studies and a lot of people that will happily help out and say, this is our lived experience. This is what we went through outside of the great supporting material. This is our building's experience. This is what we did. This is what we learned. And this is what we'd do differently if we had our time again.
That's great. And thank you for the kind words, Nathan. Would anyone else like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. Well, in our case, Yarra Energy Foundation, really, I can't imagine we would have been able to do the project without them. And I strongly recommend that people look at their materials. That's the material I'm familiar with. In terms of drafting, like in terms of preparing Q&As and so on, I mean, I was thinking a bit back to what PK said. You don't want your strata management company doing the letters and that kind of thing, because it's, it'll be so sort of dried out and boring and dull. So you do need to draft something. It's a good question, because it is something you need to pay attention to. You need to make it interesting. You need to listen to what your strata management company says, because they will have particular points that need to be in there to make the whole thing legal and so on. But you do need to take great care to sort of draft your communications carefully.
Thanks, Murray. Also really great advice. PK or Will, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Look, I certainly think that more work could be done in consolidating a Q&A around all of the possible questions. I know that there's a lot of great guides that City of Yarra and Yarra Energy Foundation have created. There's also going to be things that are going to be building specific as well. When an owner asks you about, does penetrating the roof for the cable run, how does that affect our warranty, or what waterproofing guarantee is there for penetration of the roof? So there's things like that are questions that are general, but then they're also going to be specific to the contractor that you're using as well.
Yeah, really good points as well, PK, there. And I think to give some background, before my time with Illume, I used to work with an installation company actually, and a lot of what we did was actually checking other people's work as well. So I wouldn't not suggest to, really encourage people. For example, if you, get some work done on your car and you're not really sure about it, you might take it to someone else to double check everything's being done correctly. Something like that is really important. A lot of the aspects of it are, I guess, making sure that, the quality is delivered. Installers do have a workmanship guarantee, as long as those, and at the end of the day, you've got to make sure those installers can provide that as well. But also to think that all the modules and all the products you are using do have warranties of their own as well. So that's really important. But I guess to go back to the Q&A aspect, from an Illume perspective, something that we've found more recently, we've actually we help out in Melbourne for any OC or Owners Corp that, might inquire directly to our website. We actually offer to do a quick, generally 15 to 30 minute Q&A, though we're not really involved in the process ourselves. So we only have, so much time, considering the amount of interest that there is in this space. We find that a dedicated 15 to 30 minute Q&A is really impactful. And we really, I guess, implore the OC to, work out your questions that you have or queries that the OC has beforehand, and then bring them to the meeting. And we find that has the secondary benefit of that is it actually puts the onus on the Owners Corporation to go sit down and say, okay, well, we've got to actually prepare for this meeting and find out what the issues are within the members, that live in the community. And we find that that's actually been really productive, and it makes it possible for us to actually help with that education piece from a capacity point of view. And we found that to be really, really helpful. And in saying that, doing research on the internet and cross-referencing your research is really important as well on that Q&A side of things.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for the excellent advice there. This question is from David for Will or Nathan. After a solar installation, including SolShare units, is complete, individual users can expect to monitor usage and benefits via the Illume portal. How can an Owners Corporation monitor overall usage and benefits for an entire building where SolShare distributes energy for 18 owners and common property?
The quick answer is there's an administrator portal. So you can look at the overall.
Great, thank you. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Will?
Yeah, just to add on that, I guess the idea of data is really important as well. A lot of the time, as an individual tenant, anyone that comes along with SolShare, they have full visibility on their solar being allocated to them, the amount that's being self-consumed, the amount that's exported, and they also see their energy demand. So they get full visibility on when they're using energy, which is beautiful in itself because it implores the person to actually review their behaviour and change their behaviour to suit. It also shows that, if you're not getting solar, you can actually check that from an OC perspective. And because everyone's monitoring, at least someone is monitoring, they can actually see that, if someone's drops off, then, it's impactful. the other side of things, on an overall perspective, when you keep in mind, energy data and privacy side of things, is the inverter comes along with its inverter level monitoring as well for the site, which is the standard, generally the standard approach that is usually taken where, as an OC, you get full visibility on what's being overall produced for the site. And then at least that data can be shared between everyone without, impacting on people's, data side of things. So it's really important because, from our perspective, all we do is divvy up the energy on an instantaneous basis. And it's really important that, the parts of the system that do the energy production and the conversion from DC energy, which, the panels produce, to AC energy that can be used in your building is being done efficiently. And that's via those inverters. And if you look at most of the systems are that 25 to 30 year period these days. The inverters are usually one of those things you just got to keep an eye on, usually mid-range through that cycle as well, to make sure they're still performing. But yeah, that's my side of things, Mel, anyway.
Thanks, Will. For the next question, we've got a few questions that are all along the same theme. So I'm going to read out a couple of different scenarios that people have sent through. And then it would be great if you can just discuss the overall themes, or answer these questions kind of as one, I think. So the first one is, I live and own my apartment in a block where most of the apartments are tenanted. So it's an owner living in a block where most of the other apartments are tenanted, as in rented. What suggestions do you have for getting owners corporations to install solar when most of the owners are landlords and are not living in the building? So that's the first one. It's about getting owners on board when they don't live in the building. Then the second one is about absentee owners. So I think that's very similar. Is it difficult to get absentee owners on board when it comes to installing solar? And I'm going to add one more in so we can get through a few different questions. The third one is, we only have 6 units in our block with 2 who may opt out. Is it worth attempting to go solar? So about that question of, if not everyone wants to participate. So I thought that might be a good way to get a bit of a discussion about getting people on board, even if those people don't live in the building or the units are tenanted. And what happens if you can't get them on board? If it sounds like in that case, they already know that 2 are probably going to opt out.
We had some of those discussions up here as well. And what we did as part of our sort of presentation, we put a scenario together for those owners that were, because we're about 50-50 in this building, and there was a particular element where we actually just treated it as an investment conversation and what that will do to their investment. And the answer is positive. And I think there's a couple of case studies floating around a couple of years ago, and I'm sure there's more now from Loon, but there is some estimates as to what a solar system does, efficiencies and efficiency ratings does to the actual value of the building and the apartments within it. And then the piece about is it worth it when if it's a number of apartments that are in or out? I think if we start with the answer that yes, it's well worth pursuing, and get that case study done. And it could be just a really simple one as well, then that'll give you your answers. But almost certainly the answer is yes.
Thanks, Nathan. Anyone else want to jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, strata complexes with 10 lots or less are not required to have an owners corporation committee. So if you're 6 units, then you're not going to be dealing with the committee because there might not be one. But you still need to follow the same processes of getting a special resolution passed. In dealing with investors, just to appeal to their investor mindset about saving costs. And of course, investors that are able to deduct things off their taxable income are going to find that appealing as being another expense that is incurred in their investment property.
I would say if I think it was block of 6, 2 want to opt out, let them opt out. They're not ready at this time. There's 4 of you who are ready to go. you should go. And, you know, they might well come on board down the track, but ultimately you have to respect what decisions people make about their homes. In terms of landlords, well, 2 of our 10, or 3 of our 10 apartments are landlord owned. Now, it just so happens that the landlords of those particular apartments all work in international aid projects. So they've seen the front line of climate change. So no matter what the cost dynamics are, you know, they're going to jump at it, because even though it's a very small thing in a way, it's still important to show that commitment. And then the other thing is the tax breaks. I mean, we happen to be owner-occupier ourselves, but if I was a landlord, I'd be jumping at solar, because really, I mean, it is tax deductible, and you're going to have an apartment that's much more appealing to tenants. They're likely to stay longer. Your vacancy rates are likely to be smaller. And if you eventually sell, you're likely to get more money.
Fantastic. Thanks to all of you. And I think it's really interesting that in both Murray's case and Nathan's case, there were rented apartments or landlords who came on board and did get solar along with the others in the apartment. And Murray, in your case, there were apartments that opted out and you still were able to go ahead. And Nathan, I think you mentioned that was your plan B. Luckily, you've gotten through, you've persevered and gotten through with plan A and gotten everyone on board. But it was possible in your case that you could have had, you could have gone ahead with solar even without everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It could have been any. It's a scalable solution. And I think, and if what we would have done if, let's just say there was only, for whatever reason, there was only 2/3 that wanted it, then we would have just used 2/3 of the roof and then split it accordingly and left the other third available for the for future people wanted to jump on board. There'd lose some efficiencies, but you know, again, just having that equality mindset in everything you do takes away, you know, more of the problems for now and for the future.
Yeah, I think that's really important as well. Excuse me. There is another question for you, Nathan. Belinda asks, with the EV charging, is there ever a problem with too many people trying to charge at the same time and so there's not enough power? No, is the quick answer. And also there's built into the system, there is there's some management software, which means that if that is ever the case, when the building demands are so high, then the EV charges will actually either reduce because they're the lowest priority in the building, or they will just shut off completely for that peak period until the demand drops. Great, thanks. And that's it's likely only going to be, worst case, it'll be a couple of hours in the evening typically. So there's no problem, but that protection mechanism is there. Excellent. We probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I've got a question from Michael. This is a question for Nathan and perhaps others. He says, did you have to upgrade the common area wiring and switchboard and the local transformer? No, but I was confident we wouldn't have to, but we did get that, you know, appropriately validated as well. Great. Is there any way, I guess Murray is the other person that might be relevant to. Did you want to address that? Yeah, we had upgraded the wiring and so on in the block sort of about 5 years beforehand. So we were in a good position on that front. Great.
I can add, Mel, if you don't mind. Yeah. I think a good thing just to note as well, a lot on the switchboard and the wiring side of things, sometimes a lot of the time, you know, it's incorporated with, you know, because we're going solar, we need to upgrade some of our infrastructure on site. I've been to a lot of sites where a lot of their wiring is, you know, 1950s spec, which when you look at the safety standards of today's kind of requirements, it's a bit of can be a little bit uncomfortable to look at that and say, all right, well, if we leave it as is, it may not be up to standard. So I think it's kind of just a highlight the fact that, you know, sometimes some of that, I guess, maintenance of the electrical side of things as you maintain every other aspect of your OC. It's just a good consideration to take as an owners corporation to see, what you can do, what you see as being safe on a side note as well, because it is sometimes forgotten just from a safety perspective.
Great, thanks, Will. And I'll just, we've just got a question about Solar Victoria rebate. So Murray, I know your apartment building was able to get the Solar Victoria rebates. So there's a comment here that Solar Victoria offers a $1,400 rebate to owners who meet the eligibility criteria. And I think that there's a couple of questions about just whether you can comment on the Solar Victoria rebate that you and the other owners got, and perhaps if you can share anything about eligibility, because it's not available. I guess there's this comment acknowledges that it's not available to all apartments, and it depends on the type of system that's installed. So I'm just wondering if you could briefly comment on the rebates.
Sure. So it's the rebates, both owner-occupiers and landlords can get the rebates for the type of system we installed. And, in our case, that was quite a significant saving. So the unsubsidized capital cost of our systems was $4,600. Then you knock $1,400 off that with a grant. That takes you down to $3,234. And then if you can also get an interest-free loan for a couple of years, I think it is, and you pay that back at $29 a month. And that takes the upfront capital cost down for the individual systems to about $1,800. So that was particularly important for us because we don't have a sinking fund. It's the kind of approach that we took is not going to suit everybody, but in that case, that was a sort of influential consideration for us.
Great, thanks, Murray. Did anyone else have anything they want to add on that topic? All right. Oh, PK, sorry, I think you've unmuted yourself. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Look, Mel, it was somewhat related. It really relates to being a general point around the ethos of being sustainable is also ensuring that the infrastructure you're putting into your building, whether that's rooftop solar or that's LED lighting, is the highest quality product that your owners corporation can afford. There's a lot of cheap products on the market. The standard LED lights that are available under the VIC rebate scheme will give you a 50,000 hour lifespan, but there's another product called Enlighten Vico, which will give you 160,000 hour lifespan. So if you do your research, and then when it comes to solar panels, there's a product, a company called SolarWatt that has a 30-year product, performance guarantee for a glass-on-glass German-made panel. So it's about choosing the product that is going to be right for your building now, but as we have a change in climate, it's also going to get hotter and hotter and putting more demands on the system.
Thanks, PK. Yeah, really good things to think about. We're going to have to leave it there because we've come to the end of our time. So I'll just share a few links. We've just got a screen with a few links at the end. And I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists. It was a really interesting discussion. I thought it was a really interesting discussion. And I thank you so much to everyone who's come along tonight and who's asked questions. If you have a question that hasn't been answered, please have a look at the new guides to unlocking sustainable strata and YEF's guide to solar for apartments. You can also get in touch with Illume Energy, and you can also email us at Yarra Council by emailing climateemergency@yarracity.vic.gov.au. So you'll now have an email in your inbox which has the links to further information as well as a quick survey. So we'd really love to have your feedback on this session. We also just encourage you to a couple of other things that we have happening at the moment. So you can have your say on the future of neighborhood batteries in Yarra by completing an online survey before the 3rd of April at yoursayarra.com.au/neighborhood batteries, and that link will be in your email as well. And also join our upcoming events. So we've got the Unlocking Sustainable Strata event next Tuesday at the Fitzroy Town Hall. And there's this event has been part of Sustainable House Day as a community partner event. So there's lots of things going on over the next few weeks through Sustainable House Day. And on a slightly unrelated topic, we have, but also part of our Take Climate Action events, we have a native plant-based cook-along with Nornie Barrow next Thursday, which is going to be a lot of fun online. So if you'd like to find out about our events, you can visit yarracity.vic.gov.au/climate action. And all of those links will be in the email, so you don't need to frantically write down email web addresses now. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again at another event soon.